Russ, here's my thing. Every individual fan had thoughts on whether Johnny Gaudreau made sense based on the Flyers timeline, right? Are you putting the horse in front of the cart if you go give a guy, like 7 years, 10 million per or something like that? Or should we just tear it down and bring Sam Hinkie in here and just rebuild the whole thing? So each individual fan had their own thing on that, but the Flyers told us straight up that they were going to aggressively retool, right? So
Yes.
by moving Oscar Lindblom, but not we believe, allegedly, reportedly, not being interested in attaching a high draft pick to move off JVR's contract to create that space, did they themselves not adhere to the aggressive retool? Like, does Johnny Gaudreau doing those two moves fit the story that they were, or the not the story, but the
Narrative.
strategy that they told us that they were going to do?
Yeah, they veered from it. There's no question about it. Now, do I believe that they didn't have interest or weren't in on Goudreau? No, I don't believe that at all. I just believe they failed at doing it, so they didn't want to say they, were in on it or at least going to try. We know they tried, and we know they failed. I'm not saying that that's what they should have done. By the way, I'm just saying we all knew that that's what they were going to do.
Yeah,
And like you said, you should never be in between. You either should go all one way or the other way with the rebuild. The retooling nonsense rarely ever works. You have to have a great minor league system for that. They don't. It's okay. It's in the middle of the league, but it's not good enough to restock the team for when you do that. So I get it. They wanted a star. They wanted to fill the stands. Fine. But now they didn't do that either. And now they've really lowered expectations to the point where everything they say fans are going to be upset about. They're not going to be happy, and they kind of brought that on themselves.
Yeah.
I think the thing is, like, when you look at this team as it stands right now, but the players who were left over from last year, not even talking about a D'Angelo or a Delorier or like a Johnny Gaudreau pursuit or anything like that. But there's so many question marks just with the existing guys. It's like, even if you had stuck to a plan or a strategy or whatever, you don't know what you're getting from half these guys next year. I'm just going to go down a list real quick.
Yep.
Sean Couturier is your best player coming off injury. Ryan Ellis injured. We don't even know if he's going to play, right?
I don't think he's playing.
Joel Farabee just underwent a surgery that was not expected, right?
Right.
Kevin Hayes didn't play a full season last year, right? Bobby Brink is injured, like, and that's just like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
a
That's
couple like
just
top guys there. So it's like, even if you built, even if you went after Goodrow, even if you like nailed a couple free agents, you don't even know like what you're going to get from those guys and who are already here.
no. And the problem is you can't hope that they're all going to come back 100% just because, like Chuck said, hey, everybody was under their career average last year. That's great, but you're hoping now that that turns around when guys have already, had surgeries. That's a
Yeah.
big reach. Now, they're lacking playmakers. Look, ever since Giroux and Voracek left, people could say what they want about Voracek, but he still was a guy who handled the puck and was a playmaker, always got his assists. Well, other than connecting with Farabee out, they don't have a lot of that. Atkinson's their main goal scorer. Everything else, you're hoping like with Couturier that he does a little bit of everything. I don't think he's getting to the 80-point range anymore. And the back injuries are always a little tough. And so that's you look at all that and you say, where are the points coming from? Even if Torts does something silly like put Nick Delorier in the slot on a power play, which he might because he's big, he's going to fail at it. He's failed at it before. Like I
Yeah.
remember him putting, Brian Boyle on the slot once because he's a big guy. Let's just, it doesn't work
Yeah.
that way. Mike Richards was one of the smaller guys, and he was one of the best at deflecting the puck in the net, if you remember. So,
Yeah.
you still, in the end, the skill always wins out. You might get 10 goals out of Delorier, but he might be a third liner for you too.
Yeah, yeah. I just thought it was crazy. I don't, and again, it's not like with a signing like that. If you give that guy 1 year, if you give him 2 years or something, that's fine. 4 years for a guy like
It's
Delorier is like,
crazy.
well, okay, the what now? Yeah. And like Justin Braun, it's fine. It's fine with me with Braun because like everybody was hoping that Giroux was going to be the guy that they traded at the deadline and then brought him back for the homecoming, and it ended up being your 35-year-old, third pair defenseman, right? So it's just, I
Now, if
understand.
you
Like,
want to go back to it, again, not to interrupt, sorry.
no, it's fine.
Um, we all knew Giroux had put certain demands in that, where he wanted to go.
Right.
But did the Flyers really get the most out of the Florida Panthers in that trade? No, I don't believe it
No.
for a minute. I
No.
believe I would have taken a player or two over Owen Tippett, but they were transfixed on Owen Tippett. So that was, so you kind of start there And this is where even Danny Briere, even though he's like in training, like if I was on the, on that panel this year, I'd have been like, do we have the money for Goudreau? Where do we have the assurances? Like,
Yeah,
why are we saying and they didn't say it to the fans, but they sort of intimated with the way they said they were going to be big in free agency that, fans sort of jumped to that. And it's obvious why they did, and that's fine. But they put out the word that they were going to be aggressive. And if you're going to be aggressive, you have to have cap space. You know that from the NBA, Kev. I mean,
yeah, yeah,
they didn't have the cap space. So then they get rid of the cap. They get cap space back, getting rid of Oscar Lindblom, which again you knew was going to be divisive. And Oscar could still
yeah,
play, and actually was playing pretty well last half of the season. And that saves you a certain amount. But yet JVR's on the team because you've deemed him unmovable. You could buy him out. He doesn't have to be on the team. Like you could
mhm,
just take the buyout, and I think it's like 1.7, whatever, and
yeah.
just let him go somewhere else. If he's there at the beginning of the year, like is Torts going to really like JVR? I don't think so.
No, but that goes hand in hand with like these half measures things. Like if you're in,
Yeah,
you're in, and if you're out, you're
right.
out. It's like John Fossil saying, like, push your chips to the center of the table,
Yeah,
right? Because they said that they were willing to give up picks to do the D'Angelo move. They were willing to give up picks to get Ristolainen here, right? And they did the buyout, an optically challenging buyout for a fan favorite player who won the Masterton, right? Who, even if it was the correct business decision, it was always going to be tough
yep.
to sell that, right? So if you made it that far, you've shown that you're willing to do that, then just do the other part of it. It's like, don't go halfway and then stop.